Hello and welcome. This is the movie discussion pocket dimension where time does not exist. The only thing that matters is film. I'm Cole and that's Jay. We're back, and I swear we're gonna get this going a little better. I know most of the last few months we've been averaging only like one show a month, but we're gonna sort through that and do better. There's been some external factors the last little while, all sorts of excuses, but we're gonna sort it out because Jay and I haven't even really had the chance to talk too much about it. But I mean, I've been sort of rededicating myself to movies and stuff after sort of a period of not really watching too much, and I've been getting more ideas for things that we can do. So we're going to talk about that down the road because there's all sorts of stuff I think that would be fun for us to explore going forward. So anyway, for now, this is we need to talk about Kevin from, was it 2011? Yeah, 2011, from director Lynn Ramsay, Scottish director Lynn Ramsay, based on the novel The Same Name by Lionel Shriver from 2003. I have not read the book, but I've looked up some stuff just to see, some of the key differences between the book and the movie. And this stars, of course, Ezra Miller, which is funny because everybody's talking about them right now. And honestly, it wasn't somebody I ever kept track of until they played the Flash. But I mean, I'd seen them before. I guess the name never stuck or anything like that because it's not like they appeared out of nowhere. And yes, note here, people, this has less to do with Ezra Miller as an individual and more just to show respect in general, in that I will refer to Ezra Miller by their preferred pronouns of they and them. And again, that has less to do with themselves because I'm not going to get into it, but I respect all that. I just feel like when you have somebody as messed up as Ezra Miller is, it does make you kind of doubt some of that stuff. Because I don't want to get personal, but I'll just say years ago, I had a nasty breakup with a girl. The worst breakup I ever had. Really messed things up for a while. And I'm not trying to use my bias or anything, but when we broke up around that time, she just sort of decided she was now like gender neutral and was using those pronouns. And I'm not saying that's not valid for a lot of people. I'm saying I knew her, I dated her, I lived with her. She was making shit up for attention. So it seems kind of like Ezra Miller might be that kind of personality the more I read about them. So yes, I'll refer to Ezra Miller as they and them out of respect for the concept. But I do kind of have my doubts the more I read and find out things about Ezra Miller, because they obviously seem like they are very much in need of attention and this need to look different. And I'm not trying to slap all people that go by these pronouns, by that label, saying, they're all, making bullshit up and looking for attention. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I do kind of have my doubts with Ezra Miller. But anyway, going forward for the show, because I guess I don't know, I will refer to Ezra as they, them, whatever. So, and then, of course, in addition to them, we've got Tilda Swinton, John C. Reilly, as the parents. I guess there's an.
That's pretty much it.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. It's a very intimate sort of movie, so small cast focused on the family unit. And it's been a few years since I've seen the movie. I mean, I don't mean to be predictable, but I kind of forgot how disturbing it can be. I mean, going into it, I always knew what the subject matter was and everything, but I hadn't seen it in a few years, and I forgot, also what an assault on the senses this movie can be at times. It's full of, really jarring sounds and loud things, and I know the whole point is to make you uncomfortable and sort of get your guard up and things like that. So mission accomplished, I suppose. There's also some good, we'll get into it as we go, there's some good use of various music to create contrasts and things like that. I know that that's not really a difficult thing. It happens all the time in movies, but I do think it does create the proper effect in the film. So yeah, this is my first time seeing it in at least 5 years, maybe longer. So there was a lot, like a lot of things. I remember the general beats, but I forgot a lot of the details. And it's interesting.
Have you read the book?
No. So I looked up the book just to see some of the differences. It does follow a lot of the same stuff as usual. The novel has a bit more detail and things. For instance, there's a what's the word, subplot in the novel about how, I think at the time when he's in high school, so around close to the event, he and a couple other friends, although it's heavily implied, and obviously it would be, it was sort of his idea, they accuse a teacher of sexually assaulting them. and you get the impression, the way the book is done, it never really outright says things, but obviously it gives the impression that it was Kevin's idea, and it was more, just for the hell of it, not for any reason. Like, they did not have any reason to have like a grudge against this teacher. The teacher hadn't done anything to them. It was just, something he would do to amuse himself, of course. So, of course, well, we will refer to Kevin as he, him. Oh, this is already confusing. But yeah, it does follow it. It does follow pretty closely. That's the main thing I thought that the movie had that left out, and it doesn't really change things too much. But a lot of the other stuff that I read about the book, the movie, at least maybe some of it couldn't go to as much detail, but did touch on. Like, there's like, that's the only thing I can think of that they really like left out. And as far as like the details of the event at the end or whatever, the massacre, it seems to be done very much in the same way. So I would say that it follows the novel very closely, based on what I've read about the novel, not having read the novel myself. But, the novel was written in 2003 at a time where these sorts of things were really starting to gain a lot of traction in the media. Obviously, the big one is Columbine in 1999.
Okay, yeah.
So it was sort of a very topical book.
It seems like they've really like ramped up too. So I don't know that they could make a movie like this now. 12
yeah, because at
ago.
the time they were still sort of seen more like as an isolated events. Maybe now it seems like they kind of happen like clockwork, and as they feed into each other, one sort of inspires the next. It's all very depressing. This one, being fictional, has things that separate it. Maybe the number one thing is that Kevin does not become enamored by guns and firearms. Instead, he finds an affinity for the bow and arrow. I think in the book it's a crossbow, which makes a little more sense for being able to rack up a body count, because you can obviously fire a crossbow a lot faster than you can draw a bow. But although, again, the movie doesn't make it seem unbelievable, they show the how he prepares so that he would be able to have his targets in a place where it wouldn't be hard to hit them. The precautions he takes, the preparation he makes. So it's not like it's completely unbelievable. Yeah, but that's one thing, is that unlike a lot of the other ones in real life, or even in other movies, for instance, we did one about a school shooting called Elephant that came out in 2003. I think it was the year actually that book came out. And that was very closely, obviously, modeled on Columbine, because it had two perpetrators. And of course, they did use guns, and and in that movie, it shows sort of some of their fascination with it. It shows them looking up stuff online. In fact, they even order the guns online. I don't know if you can really do that, but they do in the movie. They order guns online very easily. Yeah. They're sitting back watching like Nazi propaganda films, and the guy's like, "Oh, here's some guns for you kids. Sign here." I don't know. I mean, maybe the point was they were trying to like emphasize the point, and it's not wrong that it is disturbingly easy for people that shouldn't have guns, particularly like high-powered guns, can get them in America. So fair enough. But anyway, this movie sidesteps that. It doesn't go into guns. I'm sure Kevin probably wouldn't have any problem with guns. The thing is, he was interested in the bow. Jumping around here, but as we see, the movie's told out of sequence, and it's lots of flashbacks when he's younger, including even when he's a baby. And he fails to connect, and his mother desperately trying to connect with him emotionally, and he's just not emotionally available. And the very first and really only time we ever see him pleased about anything is when she reads to him about Robin Hood, and he becomes very interested in the bow and arrow, which he starts, actually practicing in real life, which leads up to the massacre.
And she was sick, right? Or no, he was sick when she read to him, and
yeah.
So as soon as he got well, like, it was back to normal.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what's interesting about this movie is it's I mean, I guess in the vein of the book, it's basically the Tilda Swinton show. Basically everything is told from her perspective.
Right.
With the exception of a few scenes, like I know there's some of him preparing in the school,
right?
For the massacre that obviously she's not there, but I mean there's not many scenes that she's not in. So
yeah,
it's kind of interesting.
It's really all through her lens, and you get to see where she's at. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Are we supposed to know, like from the get go, that the husband and daughter are murdered as well?
Well, having just watched it for a second time just today, it helps remind you of some things that it's easy to forget. So when you watch the movie the first time, it opens with the shot. You don't see her, but the shot of the back patio doors or whatever, but they have, you can't see out them because they have the curtains across them, and you can hear the automatic sprinklers going. So that's what it actually opens with, which is the big reveal at the end, is that she opens them, goes into the yard with the sprinklers going. So when the movie starts, if you're watching it for the first time, you don't know the significance of that yet.
Right.
So it hints at it, but no, it is sort of a big twist reveal. Although it's not too shocking considering what we know about Kevin going forward, but still, it is sort of the big twist reveal, is to show that before he went to the school, he took care of business at home first.
It was, which I think is pretty common too for some of these people to do that.
Yeah, you hear about that a lot in these things, not even just with kids, Sometimes you have a guy that went and shot up his office, you find out he shot his wife and kids at home first or something. Right. So, yeah.
The school shooting part, like, that was no secret. Like, that was kind of part of the marketing, right?
I don't actually recall the marketing, but I believe you.
It was a pretty big movie when it came out. I think I saw it like probably right when it came out on DVD or whatever back then.
No, I don't really remember the circumstances of how I first saw it. I vaguely heard about it or something like that, but I don't remember the marketing or anything. And again, I didn't know who Ezra Miller was. And it wasn't until I was quite far into the movie last week, I was like, oh shit, that's what Jay meant when he said it's somewhat topical. Because, of course, everybody's talking about Ezra Miller and all the crap they're up to lately. But it was easy for me to, I don't know, I just forgot.
Which, I mean, regardless of what the guy has done since, I think he kills it. I mean, well, sorry, a little punny. I think he does a good job in the film playing the psychopath.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, like really good.
The scene where he eats dinner with his mother, like they have a little dinner or whatever, and he's just like nailing like what's going through her head and what she's going to say next, and how she's trying to connect with him, like, and he's just a step ahead every time. I think it's a really well done.
It's a really good scene. And also between their performance and also the way it's shot is interesting too. They'll do a lot of things like close up on his mouth and things like that to make things sort of uncomfortable. And
which he's kind of got acne and stuff, and and why does he wear shirts that are too small for him? Every single time he's wearing a shirt, it's like he's wearing, like, what do you call it, like a halter top, the one that women wear,
right? So
her stomach.
It is part of his character. In fact, it does get mentioned a bit. I guess again, we just sort of see it. We don't really know. But I had a thing on here somewhere. I must have missed it. This is about the book, not the movie. But let's see here. There is something about it. He unsettles his peers, expresses his disdain for convention by wearing uncomfortably undersized clothes. So that's what's mentioned in the book. That's how they say it in the book, or in the description of the book, rather, I should say. So it's all, again, trait. It's a character trait. Again, I think it's just a way to stand out and, as I said, put people off their guard and stuff. He really enjoys making people uncomfortable, right? His mother is his favorite target, but other people too, which is something the movie, I think that's one thing that the movie doesn't really show as much in the book. The book does have him interact. It does have some of his interactions with other people, including friends and stuff. Whereas we really don't see that. It's all focused on the home life. We don't really see anything about what he's up to at school or anything like that.
Right.
The book does touch on that a bit. And as I said, there's a subplot in the book where he convinces a couple of his friends to join him in accusing some teacher of molesting them. And it's not for any reason. It's not like the teacher did anything to them or bothered them. It's just, it's that sort of character that Kevin's displaying, something to amuse himself with.
Psychopath shit.
Right. It's also maybe just to keep things from being too obvious in the movie. It's mentioned in the book that he closely follows stuff about school shootings and mass murderers and things like that. So I don't know. There's a scene, of course, where she's wondering if he has something hidden in his room, and she checks out his room, and his room is like bare, right? There's nothing in his room. There's no decoration, there's no posters, and nothing that you would see from a typical teenager. I think in the book that's a bit different because I think he like would collect some of that stuff, but then again, maybe he hid that stuff. Like I don't know if it's not made clear in what I read. I assume probably his parents would definitely, as dumb as they seem sometimes in the movie, probably would see a big red flag if he had all these newspaper clippings in his room about murders and things like that. Now, of course, well, that's one of the things that makes the movie as effective as it is. We all know what it's going towards, and it feels very frustrating at times, and you want to yell at them, particularly John C. Reilly. He seems like such an idiot. And Kevin takes advantage of this, and that Kevin deliberately knows what he can show his mother and, gaslights her and plays around by acting almost normal when John C. Reilly is around his father. Like there's a scene where it's like, "Hi, Dad, how was work?" and things like that, which is...
And he started that very young, too, which is
very young.
Scary.
Yeah. Just shows how calculating he is and how quickly... honestly, I find like the scenes where before Ezra Miller comes on, in a way, even more chilling with that kid, just because of the age of the character makes it even more unsettling, and how calculated everything he does is to really, because he refused to be toilet trained.
Yeah, that's part of it.
That's part of it. It's
punishing the mother.
Yeah, it's all to punish the mother, is what it is, because we see he's highly intelligent. He's not like a kid with learning disabilities or something that needs that was like a late bloomer. He just refuses because it's another way to punish her and put her through. And that's demonstrated very strongly in one of the scenes. But as we see, there's a part where she's trying to help him with math and counting, and he won't do anything she asks. But then he shows that he has quite a bit of aptitude and counts really high, and then she gets frustrated with him and loses her cool. And I know another point in watching this movie is how, I guess, an outside observer could criticize Tilda Swinton's character for what she does as a mother, but I don't know. I mean, the things she's put through are pretty awful.
And everything is the way the neighborhood treats her, and it's not her fault, man. He killed her husband and daughter also, I mean, yeah,
it does reflect reality, though. People do turn on them
for sure.
So yeah, I mean, so the movie jumps around in time, and
which is confusing to me.
It is confusing, but it helps it be effective. But I mean, if you want to go by the present is Kevin is locked away for his crimes, and now she lives alone, of course, and her life is pretty much a living hell even without him, because now she's a pariah. Obviously, she's lost her husband and daughter too, but not that it matters as much. But they were I don't know what John C. Reilly's character was supposed to have done, but they were obviously very well off. Look at the new house they bought, right? That was a great house.
A photographer, I believe.
Yeah, and she was a travel writer. But they made a really good living. But then you see, in the aftermath of it, when it's just her, she's just struggling to get any sort of job. She gets, some sort of secretarial job at some boring little place, and and she's she's in a crappy little house after that. So everything about her life has been taken away and downgraded to a certain extent, and she is a pariah, and she spends most of her time just trying to avoid people. Like that scene where she's in the supermarket and all the eggs are broken, but she sees that somebody has recognized her, so she just wants to get out. So she's like, "I'll buy them. I don't care. I just want to get out."
I thought that was one of the mothers of one of the victims.
It was, yeah. She remembers the scene when they're outside the school gym and the people in the crowd.
You don't know that John C. Reilly's dead at this point in the movie, if it's your first time to watch. And then, you hear, I think it's around the time with the eggs, when she's eating, picking the pieces of the shell out of the scrambled eggs. There's like an answering machine message that plays of John C. Reilly. So, you don't know if they're estranged or what, because I mean, I had forgotten that he died. Honestly, I saw this when it came out and haven't seen it since, but so, I was like, oh, they just not together, when you have tragedy like that, it's not uncommon for people to get divorced. So,
right. It seems like that probably would have happened if he'd survived.
Mm-hmm.
because the marriage was already kind of on shaky footing. It didn't seem like it was a very good marriage from the get-go, really.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, even if Kevin wasn't what he was, there's this weird rift between her and John C. Reilly where he just doesn't seem to, like, be on the same page as her or ever believe her. Anytime she said something about Kevin, he's just like, no. And even in the earliest, before Kevin shows any traits, there's a part early where his earliest trait is that he just cries a lot as a baby, right? He's always crying and screeching. And then
only
later,
with her, though.
Yeah, and then later he's taken. There's like, you just gotta hold him properly, and he's like, he always makes it seem like it's you, it's your fault, it's your problem, and that just keeps getting worse and reinforced as the movie goes by. Anytime there's some sort of problem with Kevin, and I mean that really reinforces the title. We need to talk about Kevin.
Right.
I mean, if you want to know, it's like, well, they certainly didn't talk about Kevin enough, and it seems like, well, that's really John C. Reilly's character's fault because he just never wanted to, and it was always, he's an ordinary boy, he's fine.
But from his perspective, that's what it looks like to him.
Yeah, because Kevin's very calculated.
Experienced this.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. I think you should believe your spouse. Nobody wants to believe bad things about their child, but I don't know if you are married and you are raising a kid together. I feel like why would you suddenly believe that? Like, I mean, unless it really makes no sense and your spouse is having some sort of mental breakdown or something, I think you should believe them over the kid. I mean, that whole believe kids thing, by the way, and this is a different thing, but, you know, when they talk about, like, kids, like, accusing people of molesting and stuff, I don't really think that's good. I really don't. Because people are always like, believe the child first and then go from there. I'm like, I don't know. Like, especially if they're really young. Because that has led to a lot of trouble.
The McPherson Trials, wasn't that a big part of that, where they... nothing actually happened. They just had all these kids saying,
the McMartin thing. Okay. Yeah, that was the big one in the 80s. That was also tied into the whole satanic panic thing too, because there was a thing where there was an accusation of kids at like this daycare being molested, and it just
they're all in robes and shit.
Yeah, and it was because they were feeding stuff to the kids. Like that, the kids didn't get that from nowhere. They're basically feeding to the kids. And these are really young kids. These are like 3, 4-year-old, 5-year-old kids at the oldest, and they're talking about all this crazy stuff, and they're feeding into it. And I mean, of course, eventually the investigation revealed nothing happened. Some of the kids, even when they got a little older, were like, "Yeah, I made that shit up," and things like that. And that just ruined those people's lives. But yeah, there's a good TV movie about it I mentioned before that's Indictment, the McMartin trial. I think it's McMartin, and it stars James Woods as, like, I think the lawyer that was defending one of them. It was a made-for-TV movie. It was a very good movie. Woods is very good in it. It's a good movie, but I mean, that's kind of an extreme example, but it's also a true example. It's a real-life example. So I don't know. I'm not saying don't ever believe kids or anything like that. I just mean, I remember Oprah when they would have this, she always had this, she's like, well, I'll believe the child first. I'm like, I don't know, look into some stuff and then maybe believe the child. Like, I really think you have to, think you have to, but anyway, and that's what's sort of annoying to me about John C. Reilly is that he just believes his kid over his wife over and over again. And I get it from his perspective. He's not seeing the signs. He's not around much. And when he is around, Kevin's on his best behavior and acts almost normal. But I don't know. To just doubt your spouse so much, I don't particularly believe that. I think, you know, if you're parents and you're a partnership in this, maybe you should believe the one that's home with him a lot more than you are. Maybe you should believe her.
Right.
I mean, and he's really lost it at the end, like when they're at the hospital after what happened to their daughter's eye. She just says it was Kevin. And he just gets up and goes, you need to talk to someone, and just wanders off. It's like, you are crazy. Because he's more willing to believe she made a mistake that Kevin would do this. Again, people don't want to believe bad things about their kids. But
I mean, he hasn't experienced Kevin do this, you know, and, you know, I don't know. Yeah. I can see where he's coming from is all I'm trying to say.
I see where he's coming from, but as it goes on for years and years,
sure,
maybe start to, if it's like an isolated incident or something like that, fine. But I mean, I don't know. And you see that the mother tries so hard with Kevin. It is her kid. She wants this emotional connection. And that's one of the worst things about Kevin is not only is he not capable of an emotional connection, but he also views it with such disdain that he feels like he's going to impede her at every part of it.
Right.
And again, from a disturbingly young age, he does this. What's kind of funny, and again, I don't want people to take this the wrong way or anything like that, but after she has that moment of extreme frustration after he, does the diaper stuff again, and she loses her cool and flings him against the wall and his arm breaks, right? Again, it's sort of another telltale sign of what kind of kid he is. He doesn't cry out or anything, not a sound. But is that when they're driving home and everything's the doctor, he sort of surprises her because he does not tell anybody. He lies for her to the dad and to the doctor, more or less. And when they're in the car together and everything, it almost feels like this was the only way to actually get through to Kevin. It seems like he almost respects her for using violence against him. I'm not going to put it out there. That's how you should handle bad children or anything like that. But it's an interesting wrinkle in the movie. And then she even says, she says the right thing. She says, what I did was wrong. No matter what you did or anything, what I did was absolutely wrong. And that is the right thing you should say to the kid. But you almost feel like she's losing him at this point because she's just like, you suck after all. It's like, I thought you were cool. Because it almost seems like he respects the fact that she used violence against him. Like he actually sees that as, he's not going to listen to her pleading or any of her attempts to make an emotional connection or any of her cries for decency or anything like that. But when she actually like physically injures him, it seems to like, I don't know, it seems to like work. And it says like, if she just got to beating Kevin regularly, things would have been fine. Probably not. In fact, quite the opposite happens with a lot of these other kids, right? These are kind of more or less normal kids, but they have like an abusive parent that's beating them and threatening them all the time. And then they grow up to be really messed up and they commit crimes or go on to abuse their own kids. So, but it just seems like with Kevin, it almost seems like that might have helped him in a way. But maybe not. I don't know. It just seemed to me like they were playing it like he actually respected that she did that. Because it's like the one time he sort of is quiet and complies. And he's not even giving her those like looks of loathing like he usually gives her all the time. Like he's kind of just completely blank after she breaks his arm and when they're in the car together. And it's not until after she sort of reveals her weakness by saying, I was very wrong. I should never have done that. And then he still does cover up for her. But that's partly, I think, again, because of how conniving he is. It's just simple. If he wants John C. Reilly to stay on his side, just tell him the ordinary story. I fell off the table. Accident. Because if he does say, Mom hit me, he probably thinks that is going too far. And then maybe he will start to listen to her more. He knows how to play them off each other very well, keeping sort of a balance.
Yeah. Yeah. It's mind games at its finest.
Yeah. It's an interesting casting choice to me, though. Like, whenever we watch movies, you always have people that are related to each other, families. This person's playing brothers or sisters or father. It's very hard to believe to me. I mean, it happens. People don't always look like their kids. That a union of Tilda Swinton and John C. Reilly made Ezra Miller. That seems insane to me. I don't think so. But anyway, I don't care. The movie, it's not like the movie's not well cast. They all play their roles well. But if you think about it, they in no way, you'd never think they would be related or anything.
Like he could play like Damien or something, or the younger version of him.
Sure.
Would be a great Damien.
Yeah, that was Jasper Newell, by the way, as the younger Kevin. I don't really know him or anything. He didn't do much, but he's quite effective in that. Like that's really his only movie. The rest of the stuff. Really? Or he was also in a movie called The Drowning, but I don't know what that is. And that was about 5 years later.
They both kind of look like a Justin Long type.
Mm-hmm.
Almost have like an Asian eye thing going on.
Right. So I'll stop throwing actors' names around, of course. Tilda Swinton is Eva. John C. Reilly is Franklin. So there you go. Franklin. So, but I'm trying to think of get back on track here. I was going to say something about again their marriage. What was the opening anyway? Once you got past what was that? Is that like a real thing that happened somewhere? It almost looked like it was in Mexico or something.
I think it's in Spain. It's some tomato crowd. Festival.
Yeah.
They just throw tomatoes at each other.
I was confused by like were the parents there? Because I couldn't make that connection. I was like, were they there together and then they met? Because then it seems like they're not married yet, and I don't know, they're falling in love or something weird. I can't really remember. It's like, were they at that together? Because it doesn't show them like all splattered with red. I was
Shows
just
her.
Oh, she is there. Okay, she is there.
I don't know if
It's supposed to be like when she's young. And again, I wasn't sure where it was supposed to be. I assume it's the past, like before Kevin's born or anything. Like something she did when she was younger. I mean, I get it. They're travel people. They travel around. So, yeah, I guess so. It's a bizarre opening. I guess maybe it's to, I guess it's sort of to like symbolize the violence at the end, right? Like a big crowd of people, all the red, like blood or something. I don't know. I could have done without it. I felt like it was the opening was fine with the whole camera zooming in on the doors there and hearing the sprinklers.
Apparently, it's the 4 colors: red, yellow, blue, red, yellow, blue, and white. I think is the
I think
of the bullseye thing.
Okay. That's interesting. I forgot about that.
But yeah, I only know about that tomato festival. I think it was like Road Rules or one of those MTV shows.
I knew that I'd seen something about it or read something about it somewhere along the way. I was like, that's a real thing somewhere. I don't know really what it's for or anything.
Let me tell you, it looks absolutely disgusting.
It does. It's not something I want to take part in.
I would not be doing that.
I'm not a fan of being in big crowds anyway. You know, even before all COVID stuff happened, I was never a fan of big crowds anyway. So,
well, and that's I mean, tomatoes are acidic, so you just imagine it being covered.
Yeah, get it in your eye or your nose. That's no fun. That's no fun. So, like, if we're gonna do this, can't we do it like bubble bath or something fun, something clean and pleasant?
Right.
But it reminds me of like the people at Woodstock, the later ones, the '90s ones, like running and rolling around in the mud. I'm like, I get it. There's a certain freedom to it, but it's not something that I could ever truly embrace.
I'm not doing it.
Because, like, I mean, I do miss. That's like the one time I'm okay with a big crowd is like a big outdoor music festival, which I haven't been to in many years. That's the only time I've ever really enjoyed or at least endured being in a big crowd. But yeah, I don't want to add like a bunch of mud to it. Or tomatoes or any of that other crap.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I was always confused by that opening. So yeah, I think it's like maybe they were both on assignment and they met there or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean it's very possible. It doesn't really. I know there's one scene with them, having sex or whatever. I think it may be on that same trip, but it doesn't really matter in the long run.
Yeah. Because I mean, it does a sort of like quick montage thing to show them the progression of their relationship, and then there's the part where they conceive Kevin, of course, and he's like asking her, "Is it safe?" And she's like, "It's not safe," meaning it's not one of her safe dates for getting pregnant. And he says something like, "Just try." I'm thinking this is sort of the problem of the world we live in, isn't it? Where the guy is like, "You don't get pregnant." It's like, well, maybe you could do something about it, dude. You could at least try pulling out. I don't know. I'm not. That's a lot of people will say, well, that's not that reliable, but at least it's an attempt. It's something. It's trying. He's just sort of like, well, I'm going to do it, so you better. I get it that people carried away with their passion, but I mean, this is the type of thing that must drive women nuts. He's like, is it safe? No, and it's like, we'll try. Okay, yeah, she'll just will it. She'll will it to not happen. But I mean, that just sort of pushes the thing that maybe they weren't ready for a kid when they had him. Although, I mean, he is what he is. He's a psychopath, and they didn't create him. They didn't foster this home environment of like abuse or fear, and he was born into a good home with parents that loved him and cared for him and provided for him. So it's really, this is a psychopath, and obviously they did make mistakes, but they didn't create him.
It's like a totally diffusing the nature nurture argument, where like this thing was just born evil.
Yeah, I mean, that is true about luckily a small percentage of people, and even when that happens, the good news is there are, I mean, I don't know about curing them, but there are ways to make it a little better, alleviate it. getting back to Columbine, I forget who is who, but remember of the two kids in Columbine, one was more dominant than the other. He was sort of more the leader, and the other one followed. And in the aftermath, since neither of them were technically ever, they never went to therapy or something like that, so stuff had to be done extrapolating afterwards. But psychiatrist said, one of them, I forget their names. One is Dylan, the other anyway. The dominant one is like he's straight up psychopath. If he didn't do this, he would have done something else. But the other guy, they said, if he hadn't met him, and if he had some therapy and maybe some meds, he would have been probably a pretty normal person that never did anything violent. So there's degrees of it and levels of it. But Kevin is the same thing. He's sort of an alpha. In fact, it's not in the movie, but in the book, we see that he even has the power to get others to sort of go along with him when he does that thing with the other kids. I mean, the movie's as long as it needs to be. It's not quite 2 hours, and I'm not saying I want it longer or anything, but it is a little too bad to me that they don't show his interactions with other people. I mean, I get what they're going for. They're keeping very tight and focused. It's really Kevin and his mother, and the father is there sometimes. It's really about that. But I would be a little curious to see his interactions with other people, and we don't see that at all. Because as he gets older, he does what a lot of these successful psychopaths do, which is he walks the line, right? It says that he does often show his disdain for things and stuff like that, but he knows not to take it too far. So people think, yeah, Kevin's kind of a weird or Kevin's kind of a prick, but not anything to make anybody like suspect there's something worse and deeper.
Well, it's, a lot of these people, are able to pull it off because they can play normal,
Yeah, exactly.
Like Dahmer, that the movie they made about Dahmer's, adolescence, whatever I forget the name of it, something Dahmer. But he was well liked by his classmates.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like he played it off really well because he was weird, but he was weird. He was able to take it in a way that people like enjoyed it, his weirdness. They're like, oh yeah, Dahmer's nuts. He's a crazy guy. He's fun. They thought he was fun.
And Gacy was like a big political guy. Went to all kinds of Democratic, shindigs. And, what's the big one? Bundy. Women fawned over Bundy.
Well, I think it was more so after the fact, which is more just disturbing, is that women fawned after him after he was known as a crazy rapist murderer.
That's a whole nother problem. I just mean like he was,
but I mean,
not like, hey, look at that weird guy. It's usually not, hey, look at that weird guy. He's not going to be the one that's going to do it.
Yeah, his thing was that he was very good at coming across as normal and charming and harmless is what it was. Like, I think some people, they do they get those things mixed up. It's like, no, Bundy was not seducing these women or making them fall in love with him or thinking he was so hot or anything. He wasn't. He was just pulling off this image of being clean cut and normal and harmless. All the people getting obsessed with him came after the fact. Yeah. It's funny because I remember when one of those Bundy things came out within a year or two ago on Netflix or whatever, everybody started talking about it again. And a big talking point on there, especially women, was a lot of, or like younger women or, people maybe our age now saying stuff like, what was this up with Bundy being hot? He was not hot. It's like, oh my God, who the fuck cares? What are you talking about? And the other thing was he was actually really good at being a chameleon. That was one of the reasons he was so hard to find, because they would show a collage of photographs of Bundy and he looked like a different person in every one. Like he knew very well how to like just slightly alter his appearance and he'd look so different. So that's really
the way to do it.
It's not a narrative of Bundy being really hot or women being in love with him. That's not the narrative. People get that wrong. It's just that he seemed clean cut, harmless, and normal. It's not like he seemed like, oh, he was a supermodel. He was so hot and women wanted to go with him. No, it's just they trusted him.
I think it's
the women that fell for him, again, it was after the fact. They were these twisted women that fall in love with serial killers and stuff, like, the women that were in love with Richard Ramirez.
Right. And he was a goblin.
I mean, a lunatic that raped like 80-year-old women and murdered people and lived in a shack and had a mouthful of rotting teeth. And yet there were women that were like, oh, he's so dreamy and beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's more so that you look at Bundy's rap sheet. He doesn't look like the type of guy that could pull that off. He looks normal, I think is probably what people were trying to say. He doesn't look like this, person capable
really what
of, yeah.
Because in the 70s, again, people had their own ideas of what a bad guy might look like. And he was sort of the opposite of that. Nowadays people are more used to various appearance of people, but in the 70s they're much more conservative. And you'd have people like, there was a big thing in coming out of the 60s into the 70s. A lot of the youth culture, people had like long hair and beards and stuff like that, and they were hippies and stuff. And a lot of people, especially the older people, they're people of their own generation too, because they were raised a certain way, saw this as a very bad thing. You do not trust those people. These are not good people, just based on the way they looked. So Bundy was the opposite of that. He was clean cut, didn't have the facial hair, had a nice haircut and everything, and talked about being a law student. So he was the antithesis of that. So in the 70s, that meant, oh yeah, trust this guy. In a way, it's harder now because, again, we are more accepting, and that's good. But it's also, I mean, I guess the rule is there's really nothing to watch out for as far as how somebody looks, right?
Right.
Regardless of decade or what era you're looking in. And yes, I've heard of them all. Serial killers have always been a big thing for me, which is something that is touched on again in a. It's interesting too, because the movie, again, having watched it today, it's not clear who Kevin is talking to. I assume he's talking to his mother, but it doesn't show up. There's a voiceover by Kevin talking about like how much the world sucks. You should expect this nihilistic thing, and how everything sucks and nothing's going on. And he says, everybody's watching TV. That's all they care about. Or if you're going to go out, you go watch a movie. It's like nobody's doing anything. Everybody just is watching stuff. And he says it's gotten to the point where if you're watching somebody on TV, the people on TV are watching something. It's like, what are they watching? And he says, people like me. Yeah. And he's right, because I'm part of it. I'm part of that culture of people that are fascinated by crime and criminals and serial killers and all that stuff. So he really is very much pointing the finger. He's like, you all live your boring, crappy lives. And what are you interested in, really? The shit that people like me get up to. And he's right. It is true. We're all fascinated by it. We're horrified and fascinated at the same time. I mean, it's something I just have to live with. I'm not happy about serial killers. Or people that murder or mass murder or something like that. I am interested. Of course I'm interested. I don't think I get any sort of cheap or sick thrill out of it. It's the same thing we talk about when we talk about watch how we like horror movies. I like slashers. Right. Doesn't mean I have fantasies about stabbing people. I don't. Right. I can separate fiction and reality, and I realize there are a small group of people that can't. But
yeah, I mean, it's just you just wonder what could make someone what can make a person do that, and that's the interesting part, to me.
Yeah. And that's the thing, right? Because no matter how deep I get, I've never gone really deep, but let's say I went really deep on this, and that I cut out the other stuff in my life and I just focused on looking up serial killer stuff like that. It still wouldn't turn me into one. It just wouldn't. It's not in me. I'm not going to be, even if I'm really mad or upset about something like a breakup or losing my job or something like that, I'm not just going to suddenly be like, oh, a switch has gone off and now I can do this.
But that's different. That's a crime of passion, right?
And that's the other thing too, crime of passion.
It's not like you get off on the actual act of killing, which is what these guys do.
Mm-hmm.
But this is Rodney Alcala, who I've heard of before. This is who Joe Bob brought up, and this is him on The Dating Game.
Yeah.
Dating capital of the world. It's The Dating Game. Please welcome Rodney Alcala.
Oh. Yeah, there he is.
And it's time to meet a young lady for game number 1.
Anyway, you get the point. And he wins. He wins the episode. Or whatever. I guess it's called winning. He is chosen.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I remember his story well. And he did a good job of sort of dodging for a while, too, as I recall. Like, people were on to him pretty fast, and yet he still stayed ahead of the law for a while.
What's up, Jess?
Yeah. And, of course, as we said, with somebody like Kevin, there's not really any answers. Why did he do this? Because he wanted to. At the very end, of course, she does finally, and it's actually been about 2 or 3 years since. It's been about 2 years since. And she asked him, I want to know why. And the very end is the only time he's ever humanized. He's never humanized until the very end. And that's his one humanized scene where he actually like seems like a normal person for a moment. He just says, I used to think, it seems the one time where I think he's telling the truth too. Like he's not bullshitting.
Yeah.
He's not putting on anything. I think he's telling the truth. He's saying, he says, I used to think I knew why. Now I'm not so sure. And it's like one little shred of humanity has gotten through to him. And part of it is, as you said, he's afraid about going to the adult prison after being in some sort of mental health facility or whatever for like troubled youth.
Right.
She does mention it. It's done a little better in the book as they can take their time, but she does mention like how careful he was. He times the attack to like 3 days before he turns 16 so that he can still be tried as a minor.
Yeah.
And he also has this defense about how he was on like Prozac and stuff.
Right. I was going to bring that up. It's because that was a big thing. Right? I don't know if they really prescribe Prozac anymore, but
no, they really.
I mean, I don't know about the murder part, but I know a lot of suicides. I think it caused a lot of stuff like that.
Prozac's one of those things that had like a really big boom, and it didn't last long because a lot of negative stuff came out of it. Like you can still get Prozac, but it's not the big thing anymore because a lot of bad things have happened because of it.
Some better alternatives out there.
There's better alternatives, yeah.
It's but so he was on Prozac, and he's still a minor, and basically they're going to say that he was temporarily insane because of the medicine, right? So
right,
he's going to get insanity,
so that he doesn't. Yeah, so they put him in a place. He's going to go to jail, like a real jail, but she says like you'll get out in a couple of years. And it's interesting. He shows fear about going there. It's like she says, "You don't look happy," and of course he says the very cutting line, "Have I ever?" Which is true. He's never been happy. He can't be happy. Even when he does his ultimate crime or whatever, he's not happy. Nothing seems to make him happy. Which is again one of the few times you can empathize with him. It's like what? It's hard because psychopaths are not truly insane in a way. That psychopaths are rational. They know the consequences of their actions and they plan them out, and Kevin does. But what do you do with a person that's just empty like that? They don't have empathy. It's not their fault exactly, but you can't allow them to harm society either. But Kevin does show a little bit of fear about that. He says, like, what those places are like. And I think she shows a lot of class by saying, well, maybe you should have fucking thought of that before you did what you did. She doesn't say that. I think a lot of people, that would be what they'd want to say. It's like, oh, now you're worried about the consequences. Now you're worried.
Those are places for people like you.
Yeah.
So you're not out here with us.
Yeah. I'm thinking, I don't know. I get it. He's still just a kid. He's only turning 18. But if you're a teenage mass murderer, you got to have some cred going into one of those places, don't you?
Oh, yeah, I would think. Yeah, being a mass murderer.
I mean, I don't know. No, I'm not trying to downplay violent crimes, but I don't know. Some guys like hold up a liquor store. They don't actually shoot anyone, but they threaten with guns and stuff. And now they're in prison. And somebody like Kevin shows up. I mean, is Kevin supposed to be afraid of them or the other way around?
Yeah. Well, you look at him compared to earlier when she visited him in prison. All his hair is cut off. He's got a really short.
Yeah.
And he's got, he's covered with scars. So it looks like he's having a pretty tough time where he is now. So, having to fight and stuff, I would imagine, because, scars in his hairline and stuff from look like fights or something.
Very possible. Yeah.
I just thought it was, kind of interesting. Someone who is so hardcore like him, he's having a problem now,
Right. Well, it's like a lot of these things. Everything was on his terms until he got here. The attack he planned and everything. And the movie doesn't show him using aggression on people before any of that. We don't see any scenes of him being violent or threatening violence. We know it's probably in him because of the way he acts. But, he just acts cold and distant, and he certainly has a cruelty streak to him. But you never see really him threaten anybody or anything like that. I mean, I guess the big thing is we know what happened to the guinea pig.
Right. That's kind of what the moment it got set off. When oh shit, it's gonna go south here. But if he didn't do that at the school, he probably would have done something else, somewhere else. Or he was going to kill people.
He was building to something,
yeah,
something big. Yeah. And I think he was rational enough to realize that and thought the time to do it was now. The place to do it was at the school. because he didn't have any plans for, getting away with it or anything like that, as a lot of these mass murderer types do. Serial killers want to get away with it. Mass murderers realize, if I'm going to kill a bunch of people at once in one place, there's no getting away with it. I either surrender or I get killed. And some of them choose the other, and some of them kill themselves. For instance, like the Columbine shooters, they killed themselves.
Spree killers, is that what we call them now?
Spree killers, yeah.
That's really you really have that a lot more than actual serial killers,
Right.
I guess, because the media attention.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few different reasons. One is it's a lot harder just to be a serial killer now. You can still do it, but it's a lot harder because of cameras, people being more on their guard, and forensic evidence and all that stuff. And as you said, a lot of these people, they realize my best shot at this is to just kill as many as I can at once. I won't get away with it, but I'll get to do it. Yeah. And it is kind of sad because that's the one thing that Kevin doesn't seem to be moved by, is he doesn't seem to care about fame exactly, or being notorious. He does have, again, he did have that people like me speech where he does obviously think he's special, as these people all do. I mean, they're different, so if different equals special, I guess he is special. But yeah, when you look at a lot of rip from the headline stuff of the last few years, almost all these killers, they had some sort of statement to make, whether it's wrapped up in some sort of political ideology or religious ideology or whatever. You can take some of that seriously, but most of it all just comes down to the individual and their own rage at the world, or feeling powerless and unimportant, and this is how they're going to make people stand up and take notice of them. Kevin's different from that, at least from what we see in the movie. We don't see, again, we always see him very calm, cool, and collected. We don't see him upset. We don't see him frustrated. We don't see him angry. And we don't see him having any bad interactions with anybody. It's not like Kevin, he wants to take revenge on a society that has wronged him. It's more like Kevin is a psychopath who is completely disgusted and unmoved by society. Or if he is moved, he's just disgusted by it. So this is what he'll do. But it's not like he's taking revenge or anything like that, or really even making a statement. It's, of course, open to interpretation, but I really do believe the line. Maybe some people feel like it's a cop-out when he says, like, I used to think I know, now I'm not so sure. But I believe it, and I like it. I like that he, for one moment, he does have a little bit of humanity to him. I mean, he still is what he is. He's not redeemable or anything like that, not by a long shot. But we do see a little bit of humanity shine through, where you get the idea that he has actually thought about it. Like, why did I do that? What was I trying to achieve? Was it worth where I am now? You would have to ask yourself these questions, unless you are totally insane, as some of these killers are. They're not in touch with reality. They're out of it. But Kevin's not. He's in touch with reality. He's rational. So I haven't seen it in a while, not to jump to another movie, but I'd like to see it again, because I think it's a more interesting movie. It's a similar sort of plot, but it's a very different, in its presentation, very different character. It's a movie called The United States of Leland. And I can't remember what year that came out. I don't know if it predates this movie or not. But it's a little different. It's about a teenage boy that kills another boy, but a younger, I think, mentally disabled boy. And it's I think it's, again, we have flashbacks just like in this, but most of it is the lead up to it. And, or no, it sort of jumps around, I guess, too, but we never see it. But it's really interesting. He's a more interesting character than Kevin, because he's not just some psychopath. In fact, he seems very normal and full of empathy, and it makes his act seem even weirder. And we do actually, and it's not just focused on the family. Like he actually dates Jenna Malone, who for me is forever a teenager, because that's the roles I remember her from. And they actually have a pretty healthy, kind of normal relationship. I mean, there's some quirks to it, but it doesn't seem weird or wrong or anything. And he doesn't display any traits of being a psychopath or angry or anything. It's interesting. His father is Kevin Spacey. Luckily not in real life, because that'd be a whole thing. But his father is played by Kevin Spacey, and Kevin Spacey is doing what he does really well, which is play an asshole. His father's this somewhat famous, somewhat successful author who does not bother with him at all, and is a real asshole and really is really mean to everybody. I haven't seen it in a long time, but it's a really good movie. I like it more than this movie. Although I'm not trying to compare. I'm not trying to say, oh, don't watch this movie, watch this one instead, because it is very different subject matter. Although they both are about a teenage boy and leading up to an act of violence and a killing. It's very different. He's very different from Kevin. He's not emotionless or cold or anything like that or calculating. And it sort of adds to the tragedy because you almost get the feeling he killed this kid because he thought he was like saving him or something. Because again, the kid he kills is like, I don't know, 10 or 11, and he's like mentally disabled, but he's like a nice, bright kid that everybody likes. And it's like, he never really gives his reasons or anything. So it's that sort of thing. You're looking for a reason, you're looking for an answer, probably not going to get it. But I got the impression that he did it because he felt like he was saving him. Like the world was cruel and this was better for him or something like that. But it's a very interesting movie. I don't remember who plays the kid, Leland, but he gives a really interesting performance too, because it's very different from the Kevin thing where, you know, because he's actually is warm. He's like a warm, caring person that has empathy. But I'd like to see it again.
Yeah, I know you mentioned that one before. I haven't ever seen it. I put it on my list. Stuff to
I'm just going
watch.
to double check some of the facts here. Yeah, it predates it by quite a bit, 2003.
Yeah.
So the same year the book of this was written. Don Cheadle's in there. I don't even remember Don Cheadle in there. But Leland is played. Oh, that's Ryan Gosling. Holy shit! No wonder. I was talking the other day about how good of an actor Ryan Gosling is. It's Ryan Gosling. So there you go. So 2003, Ryan Gosling. Kerry Washington's in there. Chris Klein. Michelle
Maybe
Williams.
I have seen this. I don't know. No, it's on my list still.
Anyway, it's an interesting. It's an interesting movie to compare and contrast to this. They're very different, but they have some similar things. But it's I like it a little better than this movie. It's much more sad, even though I think it's more sad because you actually do care about Leland. Like in this, it's easy to be like, well, Kevin's a lost cause. He's a fucking psychopath, and look what he's done, and look how he torments his own mother, who never gives up on him and tries her best anyway. I mean, it ends with them embracing. And again, you feel like it's the first honest embrace they've ever had. She's hugged him all the time, and he's never cared, never moved him. You almost feel like that last hug finally maybe got through to him a little bit. I mean, it's too late. It's pretty much too late, but it's something. And I mean, maybe some people would question that. Like, people talk about abandoning your kid if they do awful things. I don't know. I'm not a parent, but I was always assured by my mother that even if I did horrific things like gun down a classroom full of kids or something, she would never give up on me. You know, if I was like put in jail, she would not stop visiting me, stop talking to me. She wouldn't do that. I believe her. And I guess people can make their own things. I don't know. And I understand it in the aftermath of awful crimes and stuff like that. Again, it comes back to what we're talking about in the movie. People lashing out at parents of these people. But I don't know. Your kid is your kid.
Yeah, I agree. You know, you brought up that other movie. It made me think of a movie called Bang Bang You're Dead, which apparently it's a pretty important time for movies like this because this was 2002 in the wake of the multiple school shootings, and stars Ben Foster basically.
Oh, I remember him.
He does a school shooting. It's a good movie.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one. But I'd like to see Leland again. It's been quite a few years. Really, I found it a really moving movie. Again, it's sort of a very different tone from this movie. Leland's a very different character from Kevin. Much more sympathetic.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, a lot of it is stuff that's not in this movie is that we sort of see a weird, almost, not mental, but like emotional break for Leland. And that he starts off pretty normal, but a lot of unfortunate things happen to him and around him. And we see he just sort of starts getting overwhelmed by it. And we see his sadness. Whereas it's like, I don't think Kevin's capable of being sad.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's not capable of being happy either. He just is.
The absence of emotion.
Really, yeah. At the very end, as I said, we see a little emotion break through, so he has a little tiny bit of it.
But it makes you wonder, is that just his fear of going to the big boy prison, or
Oh, I think it's
you
definitely
know-
his fear that brings it out. It's not suddenly he feels guilt.
right.
I don't think he's capable of that, but the fear has brought up some actual real human emotion and caused him to reflect a little bit.
Mhm.
And it is a scary thought that he could be out in a few years, because it doesn't seem like he couldn't do something like that again. Just because he has a few moments of humanity with his mother doesn't, change everything or anything like that.
Right.
But it does, again, show how complicated people are. And I never, ever want to... I mean, there are people that have done horrible, horrific crimes, and it's not like I have any sympathy or empathy for them. Obviously, I don't. But I'm never happy when people just hand wave it and like call them monsters, and that's the end of it. Because the whole thing is they're human, just like you and me.
That's the knee-jerk reaction. That you got to look at the pieces of the puzzle it took to get to this point.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. Everything's not black and white as far as that goes.
I mean, I get it. I don't need anybody to tell me I'm nothing like Hitler, right? I know I'm not like Hitler. I don't think I've ever had anything that was like similar to Hitler, right? But when people just say, and I'm not saying they're even wrong exactly, but if people just say like, well, Hitler was a fucking monster, I'm like, you don't want to deal with the fact that he wasn't a monster and that he was human like you and me.
Right.
I'm not saying,
Demonizing.
you could be Hitler, because no, I don't think so. I'm just saying when we use words like monster, and I'm not saying it's not like I've never used a word like that before either. I'm just saying, but I mean, if you're really getting into it, it just almost feels like, I don't know, a separation. It feels like just not wanting to deal with it or something. It's a much easier to reconcile the acts of a monster than the acts of a human being, I suppose.
Right.
And the fact is that humans are capable. Yeah. Humans are capable of monstrous acts, which disturbs a lot of us, because it's just like, I would never do such a thing. Never. I believe you. I know you wouldn't. And it's fucked up to think that people can, but they are still people. They're not aliens or monsters. They're not possessed by spirits or anything like that. Like people might have believed hundreds of years ago or 1,000 years ago, people did something evil like that. Right. Well, the devil was in them, right?
Right. That's how you justify it.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can't believe that some somewhat normal person would be capable of that, right? Normal in some respects,
right? Especially since there are different kinds of evil in the world and ways to perpetrate it. We've talked about this before. If you go back far enough on our shows, we did that whole movie. What is it? The Vanishing, which is sort of about the banality of evil, because the whole thing is he's just an ordinary guy living an ordinary life, doesn't seem to have any reason to do this, just one day decides, I think I will commit an act of evil for the hell of it. And he's, the whole thing hammered home is just how ordinary he is, and how he doesn't really seem to have any strong passion behind it like some serial killers or anything would, or anger or anything like that. And you can reconcile that with stuff in real life, getting back again to Hitler and stuff like the Holocaust, Holocaust, the Holocaust. That almost sounds like something fun at Holland. No, the Holocaust, the thing that was so shocking about Eichner was just the matter-of-fact bureaucratic way he went about it. He wasn't cracking skulls. He wasn't shoving people into gas chambers. He wasn't, unlike Hitler, he wasn't on a podium screaming hate at people. He was just a bureaucratic guy writing his notes and hitting his stamps, sending people off to their death. I mean, so he was super responsible. And he, of course, the big Eichmann trial, and he had that big just following orders defense, and talked about how he tried to dodge it and didn't want that kind of job, but nobody believed it. And it was a different sort of monster, if you want to say.
Meaning he wasn't directly getting his hands dirty. He was giving the orders to have it done.
And that's, again, I think a kind of evil people weren't used to looking at.
Right.
Because he knew what he was doing when he was writing these things and hitting these stamps. And he knew what the consequences were. He's telling people, kill this group or whatever. it's without him actually doing it physically himself. And again, he's not the public face of anything. He's not somebody like a Hitler making big speeches or anything like that. He's just a simple bureaucrat moving the process along. But he was efficient, and it led to many, many deaths. And
I
they hanged
understand
him.
the argument, but I mean, it's hard, hard to not find someone just as guilty.
Well, I mean, that's the other thing. It was perpetrated by a lot of people. It was a big machine, and that's why
Right.
those trials, when they had them, Eichmann later, and before that, the Nuremberg trials, like almost everybody tried the, passing the blame
Right.
defense. It wasn't me, it was somebody else, or whatever I did, it was because I was following orders, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But that kind of evil is more difficult for people because it's less cartoonish. It's more banal and normal and harder to spot.
Right.
And that's what's scary about somebody like Kevin, is how well he blends in. And even if he seems a little odd or weird, well, like we said, Dahmer was popular in high school. Nobody had any clue what Dahmer was hiding, what was inside him, what he was capable of. They thought, yeah, Dahmer's he's kind of kooky. He's a fun guy, though.
I mean, I was weird as fucking high school too. Like, I'm still weird.
Yeah.
Like if I went and shot the place up, I don't think there would be anybody that was like, oh wow, I can't believe he did that.
Ouch. Yeah.
Which is not I don't know if that says something about me or other people, but I wore a trench coat.
I think other people, really, as I said, every decade when we were talking about the stuff in the 70s, it's like, yeah, we update it. We look for different things to make people into outcasts for. But no matter how much things change, there's always a group that, makes outcasts of the others, that says, whatever it is about you, you don't belong. You're not normal. You're not cool. So you go do your thing over here. And every once in a while, somebody like that does do something, and I guess that's enough to perpetrate a stereotype, right?
Yeah, but I mean, more times than not, when they're interviewing the neighbors, you're like, he was just a normal guy, I didn't know he'd be capable of something like this. I mean, it's not like, oh, this guy, I knew he was going to do it.
Yeah.
He was weird as hell.
And I mean, for every like outsider or outcast that, does something like a killing or something like that, there's also like the opposite. There's some handsome, popular jock that does it.
Yeah.
So it's funny, like, you think by now people would learn, but it's very hard for us to get past our own stereotypes and prejudices and things like that. We still want a killer to look a certain way or act a certain way, and so that it makes sense to us.
Right. It's all a way of dehumanizing that person to where, like you were saying, like they're a monster, or they're evil, they're, this couldn't happen in a, any town, small town in, the world. It's, this guy right here, he's a special breed,
Yeah. Well, I used to watch that show. Paul Winfield was the narrator. What the hell was it? Was always just it had something to do with you, and it always opened the same way, like Paul Winfield, like saying, like, it was the last town you would ever expect to murder, and then you'd have like a montage of people saying it was a great place, I loved it, it was sunny, people didn't lock their doors, people smiled to each other on the street. It's like, but little did they know, and it goes on about some murder or somebody hiring a hitman or something like that.
Right.
I can't remember what it was called, but I used to watch it all the time. It was on A&E. Just before A&E turned to complete garbage. Like, A&E at one point was a really good channel. Now it's complete just reality show garbage.
Arts and entertainment.
In the middle 2000s, it was I need to look up the name of that. Paul Winfield had such a great voice, so he was a perfect narrator. He couldn't get Morgan Freeman. Paul Winfield would do in a pinch.
Oh yeah, he was in Sounder. I love that movie.
He's all over TV. City Confidential, the show that ran from 1999 to 2004. Okay. It's called City Confidential, and every episode was just like a documentary thing about some murder. and he was the narrator, and everyone opened the same way. It's like, it was the last place anyone ever thought there'd be a murder.
You know, I can guess why it ended because he died in 2004.
Yeah. Actually, Keith David did some episodes after him.
Oh, really? He has a great voice too.
Yeah. Oh, look at this. There's A&E says they're going to. Oh, did it happen again? Because it says here, A&E announced that the series will be revived, hosted by actor Mike Coulter. So that's Luke Cage, produced by Propagate, with the new first new episode set to air on October 28th, 2021. Did that happen? Is there a new one?
I'm trying to look it up as well.
I don't see anything past 2005, so I don't think that happened. Or maybe, got pushed back by COVID or something.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, Mike Coulter's pretty cool. Anyway, it's been many years since I watched that kind of show, but I used to watch it all the time. But it was always the whole idea of, it's a cliche, but it's true. It's just, some sleepy, happy town where everybody's nice, and then some murder happens, and everyone's like, what? I mean, I get it. I'm not trying to laugh. I understand how shocking that is to a community. It's another thing that makes this movie a little different. Is the movie, again, is very centered just on really Kevin and the mother. We do see a bit of the community in the aftermath. We see how she's shunned, of course. We did do a movie on here that talked sort of about the aftermath of a tragedy and the way a community reacts, and that's The Sweet Hereafter. But that's a very different sort of tragedy. That's a one where it was an accident. And the whole thing was there wasn't really anybody necessarily to blame. It's not like somebody murdered anybody. So it was, you had people sort of looking for somebody to blame, and different different approaches
blamed
to that.
The driver, didn't they?
The bus driver. Yeah, some people did. Some people chose to blame the driver. And that's where the lawyer played by Ian Holm comes in. Like, he doing his lawyer thing, he tries to encourage some people to point blame somewhere. He's like, well, what about the bus company or something? Like, they did something wrong. And some people did refuse to point. So anyway, a different sort of movie, but it does look at the whole idea of a community dealing with trauma in the aftermath of a tragedy. Again, this is much more focused and centered on Tilda Swinton's character, Eva. And you just see that it's all just raining shit on her.
Oh, you have to move, man.
Yeah.
You can't stay there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, actually, she has moved, but just not completely out. Because actually, where she's moved, it's not necessarily made clear in the movie, but not only is she moved to get out of that house, but also it's to be closer to where Kevin's being held. Although that's obviously not too far, because she still keeps running into people. She runs into a survivor, and he's in wheelchair, crippled, and he's the only person that's kind to her. Like, all these other people were either indirectly, they were indirectly involved. I mean, I'm not saying they should be happy that their kid got murdered and like that, but I mean, this guy was actually, and he knew not to blame her or be angry with her.
But that's the knee-jerk reaction. Your kid did something, so you're to blame, That's kind of how it works. But
I mean, that was I'm sure it's happened in others, because there's so many, as we said, it's kind of sad. There's so many we've lost count. But if we go back to the really famous Columbine, that was a big outcry. Like, where were the parents? What were the parents doing? What did they know? And it's not like that's a completely unreasonable question. But you never get the answers you want.
I know I mentioned this on this show before, but one of the, right when the school shooting trend spiked, like the very first one was here, like with that big surge. A place not too far away from me right now, actually. But Luke Woodham, basically textbook, killed his mother, went to school. I forget his body count. It's not high as far as the numbers go, but it was just kind of, it was a big deal here, obviously, but it was, national news, and, totally overshadowed by some of the bigger body count murders later on, and the horrible shit that happened to Columbine. But It was probably a year or two before Columbine. It was a bunch of murders right around that time, or a bunch of school shootings. I know there was one in Arkansas with they were like 10 and 11 years old, these kids that did it.
I mean, I knew they existed before Columbine, but at least where I lived, you didn't hear about them really that much until Columbine. I remember, this is hard because I can't remember if I watched it before Columbine or not, but I remember, I think it was before Columbine. The movie, I think, came out in 1997 and had Ricky Schroeder in it. And it was based on a true story. And it wasn't that much of a, I think he only shot his teacher, and then he took his classmates hostage. And what's his name? The Fonz. Henry Winkler plays the cop in it. It's actually it's actually really good. It's shocking. It's too bad that I think Ricky Schroeder's kind of lost his mind. I think he's kind of insane these days. I think he has mental issues.
Is he the main kid in it?
He's the shooter. Yeah.
Cool. I'd actually like to look that up because
I can't remember what it's called, but it's based on a real shooting. So I remember watching that, but again, it wasn't a big body count thing at all. Again, I think he only killed his teacher. I think he killed his teacher, and then he took his classmates hostage. And, they cleared the school, and basically they did negotiation with him. And in the movie, anyway, the cop played by Henry Winkler is the main guy, and they sort of build a rapport and everything. I can't remember what it's called, but I haven't seen him in many years. But I mean, I remember seeing that on TV, so it probably was before Columbine. So maybe this is the first time I thought of it. Of course, we all know the video. This is a different circumstance, but remember one of the most famous music videos of all time, Jeremy by Pearl Jam. And I was remember, everybody knows the story now about how, of course, MTV or whoever were upset by it. And they tried to make cuts to it. And when they did, they made it look worse. Because I was like many of the kids. When I watched the music video, I thought it was clear that he blasted his classmates. When, of course, that's not what happened. And that's not what happens in the video. It's supposed to happen in the video either. The whole point is, just like in the real life thing, the kid turns the gun on himself and shoots himself in front of his classmates. But the way they edited the video, at least originally, they didn't want to show him pointing the gun. So when it just shows all this blood splattering the kids, I just thought that was him blowing the kids away. That's what I thought for years. Until I looked up the story and then found out stuff about the video. That's what I thought. I thought in the video they were showing him mowing down his classmates because of the edits they made, but that's not. They were just trying to tell the story of the kid, what actually happened, which is he shot himself and killed himself in front of his classmates. But the way they forced them to edit it does not show him pointing the gun at his head. So for years, I thought the video was him, shooting his classmates.
A perfect example of them making it worse than it had to be.
Yeah, exactly. It's pretty funny.
But hey, let me play this for you real quick. I don't know if you've heard this story. It's just 3 minutes long. Since we have the ability to do stuff like this, it's might as well.
Yep.
I think this may be audio only.
Anyway,
that would suck being in prison.
What's the Webster story?
What could be worse than getting your freedom taken away?
I know. I think I'd rather be dead.
What's amazing is all the different shit they can put you in prison for.
So the Webster story. So I'm at one of these network junkets where you go to promote your show and stuff, and all the other actors and casts are there from their shows, and this little black kid, this tall, was just cute as could be, man. And just I put him on my knee and I started just playing with him and bouncing him around, and he was giggling and laughing and having a good time. And then I liked kids. I've always liked kids. So I laid the kid back and I blew like in his neck.
Zerbert.
Zerbert? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, that's what Bill calls it. Bill Cosby.
I blew him a couple Zerberts and he's giggling like a little 4-year-old, right? And I put him away and let him go ahead now. I'm done playing with you. And somebody comes over and says, he's 16, right? No. We were the same age. We were the same age, man.
Oh my God.
And he didn't say anything. He just laughed.
Oh my God.
That's the best story ever.
Oh my
Holy
God.
shit. fucking gave the 16-year-old Webster a Zerbert.
Oh my god! On a 1 to
Was
10,
it- now-
on a 1 to 10, what was the embarrassment level
Oh,
when you found out he was your age?
it was huge. I felt really.
What did you think?
I felt bad. I felt gross.
Oh my god.
I felt gross.
That's
Anyway, I just thought that was kind of funny. Maybe break the tension up a little bit. We're talking about murders and shit.
yeah. The movie's called Detention: The Siege at Johnson High,
Okay.
but it came out in '97. It was based on in 1992 the Lyndhurst High School shooting and siege. Gunman, 20-year-old Eric Christopher Houston, and a former high school. Oh no, he killed 3 students and 1 teacher and wounded 9 students. So actually, I think they tone it down for the movie.
Wow.
'Cause I don't think the movie is that violent. I think in the movie he just kills the teacher and then takes his classmates hostage. I don't think he actually kills any. Of course, it's been many years since I've seen it, so I could be wrong. But I don't remember him like shooting any of his classmates.
Toning it down.
Yeah, he engaged in an 8-hour standoff with police before surrendering to authorities. So that's the same. A rare surrender, since most of these don't surrender. They go for a shootout or kill themselves.
Right.
And with stuff like the Columbine, we'll never actually know. And they kind of hint at it in Elephant, right? In Elephant, one of them just kills the other out of nowhere before he kills himself, and it can't be proven forensics wise or anything. And it's not on. I don't think it's on video. We're not sure that the killers just killed themselves. It's possible one killed the other first, but they don't.
Columbine.
Yeah, it's possible. They don't know. So I think that's something they sort of hint at in the Elephant movie, where one just does out of nowhere kill the other. Like they always plan to die anyway, but it was way before. Like the other guy did not know he was going to do it, and he just shoots him.
Right.
Elephant's such a good movie.
And they had
I know we already covered it. We did a whole show on it for people to.
That is
So
a
we don't
good
need to
movie.
talk about it more. But if you haven't seen it, you should watch our show on it, because that's a really good movie.
I won't go there. I'm going to spoilers for Elephant, so we'll save that. Go watch that show if you want to hear us talk about Elephant more.
Yeah. Ezra Miller. Trying to think of any of the scenes. No, not really.
You know, I'm watching it back right now, and you know when she gets the whatever the Drano or whatever she unclogs the sink with,
Yeah.
and then it quick cuts to her. I didn't even realize this at first, but she's washing. I'm assuming it's the blood from the end of the movie off her hands. Like she pours it down the drain, and then it cuts to her the same sink, her washing her hands. And they're
No, I
covered in
think, yeah, no, I
blood.
think it's supposed to be is like when she put the Drano down, it caused blood to bubble up because it was starting to eat away at the guinea pig.
Is that right? Okay,
That's what I think.
see, they keep changing her hairstyle
Because
so
there
you
is a
know
scene
it's
at the end of the
different time.
movie where she has all sorts of blood on her, like because that's after she's gone out and like I guess hugged her husband and daughter. So she does have a lot of blood on her at the end that she got from like from touching their bodies. But
Maybe just
the washing the
foreshadowing
hands,
it.
the washing the hands thing, I'm pretty sure is to confirm to us that the guinea pig got stuff down there because it's like she put the Drano down, and it doesn't actually show it, but I assume like the sink probably bubbled up with a bunch of blood as it started to like eat through the guinea pig. Pretty
See, it
gruesome
cuts
stuff.
around and adds inserts from stuff that happens later on that you don't know what that is if it's your first time to watch. So I don't know. I thought maybe that was one of those moments, but I don't know. It's her. You have to watch her hair, the length of her hair to figure out where in time it is.
I think the most violent thoughts I've ever had was like maybe I wanted to punch someone. And I think we've all at some point probably wanted to punch someone. Yeah. No, I've never thought about really hurting anybody or killing anybody. And I know that's the safe answer. It's like, if you did, you would say it. You wouldn't say it, would you? I don't know. But I just mean no, I've never. Yeah. I think the most violent, like serious thought I ever had was like, yeah, probably somebody who bothered me or was mean to me or something. Or it'd be nice, satisfying to punch them.
Hmm.
But that's about it.
It does suck, Jamie.
Yeah. Well, everybody's. At least you have power and stuff. I was just thinking, my parents in Cape Breton, everybody, they have a generator now to help a little bit, but everybody's like going crazy trying to get fuel. My dad was in a line for 4.5 hours to get fuel.
I know you guys had that hurricane. I think there's one headed towards
Yeah, there's one going on right
the
now.
East
But,
Coast, and then I think there's another one headed for Florida or something. There's
Yeah.
a few in the works.
yeah, Ian, I think Ian's on its way to Florida. I guess it's not coming here because otherwise I'm sure I would heard a lot about it. Because wouldn't that be something to get hit by one, and just be recovering and have another one happen?
Wow.
I mean, again, I'm not trying to overplay what happened here because I know it's nothing compared to like what it's like in places like Florida and the Caribbean, where places just get flattened. I'm just saying, as somebody that had lived most of his life thinking I probably wouldn't have to deal with hurricanes, to suddenly deal with them was really something. I mean, the first one, Juan, in 2003, that will forever be the big one. I hope I never, ever go through something comparable to Juan or worse than Juan, because it was bad enough. I mean, again, not comparable to way down there. Somebody did die, though. Somebody in Halifax did die from Juan. They got electrocuted. And somebody in Newfoundland during this storm, they got swept out to sea. I don't know if they got them or not.
Wow.
Because, I mean, I'm surprised how powerful it was getting into Newfoundland, because that's a few hundred miles north of Cape Breton. And it was still powerful enough to really fuck with places like Port aux Basques. And I don't know how familiar you are with a place like Port aux Basques, but it has a lot of houses that are right on the ocean. And quite a few like halfway fell in or,
Wow.
collapsed and things like I wouldn't want to live in those houses during like a normal storm. Like a hurricane is insane. But as I said, I was very lucky. I mean, Halifax got hit, and there's people still here that don't have power, but I got power back insanely fast. I was like shocked by how quickly the power came back for me, because I would say this hurricane was more severe here than the one in 2019, and yet that time I lost power for over 3 days. So it's just sort of a luck of the draw of what went down or the grid I'm on or something like that. But for those that don't know, Juan was the first hurricane in my life, and by far the most severe. It just wrecked I don't want to say wrecked the city, because again, not comparable to the places down there. I wonder about that trade-off, though. I mean, I want to ask somebody that lives like in the Bahamas or something, like, is it really worth it to get like your community smashed like every, I don't know, year or two, like just flattened by hurricanes that you can't, are coming, but you can't do anything about? Like, I mean, the destruction is just destroying buildings and putting the power out for weeks. And I don't know. I'd say maybe you should live here. I know you'd had to deal with snow and stuff, but I don't know. I don't think it's that bad of a trade-off. Because, I mean, yeah, everybody dreams of living somewhere tropical and nice, but I don't know if I want to if I'm always going to get smashed by hurricanes.
Right.
Like Philippines has a typhoon right now. I'm not saying people everywhere should move. That's not what I mean. I'm just saying, like, there's a downside to everything, I guess. You think about how nice these places are.
Yeah. Well, you
They're
go
nice.
somewhere away from the ocean and you've got, tornadoes or something. It's
Yeah.
always going to be something else.
I guess. I mean, as I said, growing up most of my life, severe weather might have meant a ton of snow. A hurricane was a new thing. And I mean, 2003, it seemed pretty isolated. We didn't have another one until 2014, and that one was not much of anything. I don't even remember it. But then one in 2019, now one in 2022. I mean, it's changing. It seems like it's, the intervals are getting shorter and shorter. So I can know, because I mean, I spent most of my life scoffing at hurricanes as far as coming up here. It was always the same story. They'd do a real number where they started, of course. They'd smash up everything in the Caribbean. They'd do a number on Florida, southeastern United States. But by the time they got up here, they were manageable. They were tropical storms, and they were no big deal. And that's what I stupidly thought that about Juan. I was like, that could be anything. And then Juan just rocked my world, like a lot of people.
So isn't the whole deal with hurricanes like they start and they're small, and as the waters get warmer or whatever, they gain power, But I think like when it hits like Puerto Rico and Cuba and stuff, like I mean, I know it does a lot of damage and stuff, but I don't think they're near about like the category that they get up to when they hit land, you know, on, you know, us or you guys to get up to category 4 or 5 or whatever they go up to.
I think this one was 3. This Fiona. It was I think it was 3 when it hit Cape Breton. Felt maybe more like a 2.5 here. But I haven't even. But I finally been watching some of the news and stuff for Cape Breton. As I said, my mother hasn't really sent me any pictures yet because she's trying to save the phone and things. But I know the yard is pretty wrecked.
I bet.
And again, there's worse stuff than having your yard wrecked. Nobody's dead or anything like that. So, but yeah, they're going to be without power for some time. And I mean, this was Friday evening.
Wow.
I was just sort of amazed by the shock of it because we almost, you know, we had to move this show a few times and then we tried to move it to Friday and then something came up and you couldn't do it anyway. And yeah, I mean, if it had gone ahead, I think Fiona made landfall here somewhere around 9 o'clock. Maybe actually a little later than that. It was supposed to be a little early. It was a little late. It might have been like 9:15. And at 10:08, my power went out. And it didn't even seem that bad. But again, it's hard. I don't live in a great place to gauge things. All that's across from me is a goddamn parking lot. Actually, when the power went out for me, there were 3 girls in my parking lot dancing like lunatics.
That doesn't surprise me.
No. This time, this was, I mean, this being my 4th hurricane, this is the time where I was smarter and stayed inside the whole time. And in fact, once the power went out, I was like, I'll go to bed because there's nothing else to do. So I went to bed. So I missed a lot of it. But Juan, my roommate, and I went out before it was fully over because we didn't fully understand that. And with the one in 2019, I was like, I want to see it arrive. So I was actually out when it came and like, you know, I wasn't far from home. I had only gone a few blocks away, but I rushed home when it got going because yeah, it's really something. Because I was like, this was really stupid. Because I mean, not only was the rain like hitting you like bullets, but I saw like signs flying around. I was like, that could take my head off. I'm really dumb. So I rushed home and made it okay. So this time I saw the least, probably because I did the smart thing. I was like, get home, stay home. Because earlier, like around 5 or 6. I just wanted to go down to the waterfront because I just wanted to see what the harbor looked like. Because usually when these things start, what happens is, you know, white caps will start to come in. You see the ripples far off, but the police were already closing it off and not letting anybody down there. What's funny is like when I finally did the next day, I went down to check out the boardwalk. The boardwalk wasn't bad at all, which was like the opposite of Juan. Juan trashed the boardwalk. And I remember there's this building right on the boardwalk, and it had like a little patio of like bricks, and like half the bricks were like torn up. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Anyway,
the time of year.
So it's still pretty rough for a lot of people in Cape Breton, but here's not too bad. I mean, I know people live in places like I can't remember the names of any places anymore. It doesn't matter because people don't know them anyway. But I know there's some people like my aunt. She's not really my aunt, but anyway, I call her my aunt. Like she lives not too far from me. She still doesn't have power. So it just sort of depends on where you are. But I was very lucky because I didn't have to deal with powerlessness much. And as far as like going places, most of the places I've gone to are okay. So I've been pretty fortunate. But yeah, I hate the idea of another one. But I guess Ian's not coming because obviously it would be everybody would be talking about it. Yeah. So it's obviously not coming here.
I think Tampa Bay area is what they're talking about.
Yeah. The first hurricane I remember was the big one in Florida in 92, Andrew.
Yeah.
That's the first one I remember.
Which that's really the reason why there's so many crazy animals in Florida. One of the big reasons, yeah, because it hit, zoos and pet traders and, they just released pythons and
that is nuts.
All kinds of crazy stuff.
Yeah, because birds do get blown off course. Because actually in 2019, Not here. It's funny because, like I said, the opposite of this time. Cape Breton wasn't as bad as us, but at the harbor in Glace Bay, there was a brown pelican that had gotten there. Like there'd never ever been a brown pelican
Wow.
before, and everybody was coming down to watch him, and he seemed to enjoy the attention because so many people came down to like watch him and take pictures of him and stuff. He stayed for a long time. Now, nothing that cool as far as I saw happened, but maybe I can show you pictures later. So I'm sure you've seen, I can't remember the name for those ducks, but you know those ducks that are like, they're bigger than ordinary ducks and they're longer and skinnier. They have long necks and they don't have the flat bill. They have like anyway, and they're dark black and they have bigger feet. Anyway, they like to dive. So how we've always had those, and there's a park coming out of a park here on the water where you could watch them dive and stuff. But on Saturday, when I went downtown to check out the waterfront, two of them were right on them below the boardwalk on one of the docks. I'd never seen them that close before in my life. And I got several pictures of them. They're really cool because I'd never seen them close up before. I always saw them from far away diving in the harbor. And this was a pretty far inland too. Usually it's way down towards the other end that they're in. So I assume the storm affected them a little bit because I'd never seen them in that close. But they're not like from a totally different area like sometimes happens with some of these birds.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know that birds will get blown off course and wind up in completely different places. But yeah, Florida, that's pretty nuts about like zoos and stuff.
Yeah, they've made it like illegal to own green iguanas. There's a few other, which I mean,
I own 2 green iguanas because I was a kid.
Yeah, I did too. I had a few actually, but
not together consecutively. I had one who died, and then I had another.
That's not going to solve the problem. Like it's already the problem's there. Like keeping people from having pets is. I mean, I get it, but
I mean, yeah, you do have to restrict certain kinds.
But I mean, they're everywhere. I mean, they're literally everywhere. So whenever they have like a weird cold snap, they just fall out of the trees, they say. The iguanas.
That was one thing I enjoyed when I was a kid about being in Florida was like seeing lizards in places. There's no lizards don't live in Nova Scotia at all. There's no lizards in Nova Scotia. We have some turtles, we have some snakes, but no lizards. So I can remember, going to places like Epcot and Disney World and stuff, and just in those in-between places where I'm sitting on the curb and there's, some shrubbery behind me, and there'd be little lizards running around, and I always thought that was cool. Because, I mean, if I did live in a tropical place, I would definitely own a lizard again. Maybe a kind of gecko or something. I really did like my first iguana was kind of sickly. He didn't live long. But my second iguana, Pat, he was great. He had a great personality. He was really friendly. He was really cool. He used to break out of his cage all the time and wander around. He loved to swim. He liked to swim in the tub. He was cool. I miss him. Because, I mean, when I was a kid, reptiles were a big thing, and particularly lizards. I even subscribed to a reptile magazine in like the mid-90s. I used to love them. And I always used to think about getting geckos and stuff. And oh well.
I wish we lived closer. I actually need to get rid of some geckos. I've been breeding them for a while, and I need to.
Oh yeah, what kind?
They're crested geckos from New Caledonia. I think the island is off of Australia.
Oh, nice.
It's really cool because they're fine at room temperature, so they don't really need a lot of extra heating.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen geckos at stores here. Usually the popular ones are the leopard geckos. Yeah. I see them a lot. The tokay geckos, which I've heard are kind of vicious and can bite your finger off, even though they're very pretty. I like house geckos because they seem much more easygoing.
Yeah, we have the ones outside that are from like Madagascar or somewhere. I don't know how they got here, but they live here,
Yeah, that was like a goal pet that I never achieved when I was a kid. I always assumed I would get a gecko at some point. It's not too late, maybe someday. But yeah, I used to really be into all lizards, but geckos in particular I had a real interest in because they're just so cool how they look and how they stick to everything. I'd see them in the store, they all be up on the ceiling.
Oh yeah.
Yes, I heard the garbage song. That's a song I really like, actually, Jamie, because you've done a few songs. It's not like I dislike them or anything, but they're not ones I really have much of an emotional connection to. But that is one I always was a big Garbage fan in the 90s. That's a fun song. I can't believe Shirley Manson's dead. She was only like she was like 50. Right. They had just reunited too. She was like turning 50, and they were reunited, and she died.
What did she die of?
I don't remember.
I know the Cranberries lead singer died a few years ago as well.
Her too?
Hers may have been suicide. I'm not 100% sure though.
Oh man.
Either drug overdose or suicide or both.
Oh,
something like that.
Oh shit! Don't tell me that the one from Elastic is gone. I won't be able to handle it. I say the one, even though I can't remember her name, but you all know who I mean. I liked Elastica a lot too. Cool band. Speaking of those bands, some of the music in this movie was scored by Johnny Greenwood from Radiohead. So it's not at all surprising that some of it sounds like ambient noise. Not taking a shot at Radiohead or anything, I'm just saying.
There is some stuff that she listens to. Like I know when they're in the car and he's like, turn this off. I don't like it or something like that. And, he points at his broken arm and she turns it off. And it's just like a bunch of strings, just like, I don't know, like somebody's killing a cat or something.
Yeah.
It's rough. It's like, I don't like it either.
Mm.
Turn it off.
Yeah, I don't think in the book, I can't remember if Franklin is killed in the book. Because I didn't actually read the book. I just read stuff about the book.
So Dolores O'Riordan,
yeah.
O'Riordan.
She's dead too, huh?
Yeah, there was she was accidental drowning in a bathtub due to alcohol intoxication.
Oh, maybe I was mixing. Okay, Shirley Manson's not dead. I think I mixed her up with Shirley Manson, even though I know Shirley Manson's garbage. So it was the Cranberries that were reuniting. I thought Garbage reunited recently. I'm confused. I'm glad Shirley Manson's not dead, though. That's good.
Is she not? Okay, good.
No, it was the Cranberries person I was mixing her up with. He's not really a fan of Cranberries.
They had a few songs. I like their extremely Irish accent.
I mean, everybody likes that song Zombie. I've always found it super annoying.
It's It's really been done to death at this point. I mean, it's been remixed by everybody on Earth, and
I mean, there's got to be a better song called Zombie. Yeah, I have my people mixed up there. I'm glad Shirley Manson's not dead. I mean, I feel bad about O'Riordan, of course, but I was a bigger Garbage fan, not really a Cranberries fan. The Cranberries I don't dislike; they were just there. But no, I don't like I don't like the song Zombie at all. Oh, they have another song that I find even more annoying.
Linger was their other big hit.
I think it was Salvation.
Okay.
Now I can't remember how Salvation goes, but I remember that I found it annoying.
Did you ever watch Sucker Punch, the Zack Snyder movie?
Yep.
I know Jamie's a big fan of that movie. She's in the chat, but I thought that was a really cool soundtrack. Like they remixed a lot of old Bjork stuff, and like
I haven't seen it so long.
I don't remember techno sound almost, but
I don't remember any of the music. I haven't seen it in a long time. I thought it was fine for what it was. I remember like it had a huge backlash at the time, right? People were like, "We've reached a new low if this is a movie." I was like, I don't know. It's just a bunch of cool sequences is what it's supposed to be, right? It's not really supposed to tell any great story or anything like that. It's just a bunch of, I don't know.
I almost like the concept more than the execution, but it's fine. Very, very stylistic, typical Zack Snyder.
Yeah, she was known for her lilting mezzo-soprano voice, signature yodel, emphasized use of keening, and strong limerick accent. Well, I'm sorry to say I don't like any of those things. I mean, I'll give her credit for being unique, because I mean, a lot of singers sound the same. It's kind of cookie cutter. So I don't want to come down on somebody when they actually have a unique voice or sound. But yeah, I'm just, again, I don't really have any strong dislike for the Cranberries, but I was never into them. I found a lot of their stuff annoying. But it's very tragic that she died, because they had just like reunited.
All right, would you go Cranberries or Sinead O'Connor?
I mean, Sinead O'Connor, I would definitely say, is the better vocalist, but I would go more Cranberries because I'm more of a rock guy, right? More rock and roll type thing. So, but I definitely think Sinead O'Connor is the better vocalist.
You remember the Saturday Night Live episode? Fight the real enemy. She holds up the picture of the Pope.
I was too young, but I mean, I know it. Yeah, she ripped the Pope in half. Yeah,
I think in the like reruns, they didn't show it.
Oh, I'm sure they didn't. No, my big SNL moment was fucking Ashley Simpson lip syncing herself. God. I saw that as it happened. That's my great moment, because I was watching at the time when it happened. I was on the phone with my friend too, and we were talking. I wasn't paying much attention. I was like, "Oh shit!" He's like, "What is it? What's going on?" I was like, "Yeah," and it's not that big of a deal, but yeah, that was my great SNL moment. Ashley said, and then at the end, she came out and blanked and lied. She said like her band started playing the wrong song. I'm like, no, they didn't. Your track just started playing.
She does that weird jig, whatever kind of
yeah.
It's awful.
She had no idea what to do. Ashley Simpson, another product of the mid 2000s. It's like, did you know Jessica Simpson has a little sister and she's a rocker? She's like Avril Lavigne. Yeah.
She married someone that was pretty big in the music industry. I don't remember who it was.
Ashley Simpson?
Yeah, another artist. I think. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't think it was Britney Spears' sister.
She married Evan Ross. I don't know who that is. She married somebody named Evan Ross, who's been in like some TV and movies. I don't know. But they've been married since 2014. So there you go. Okay. I don't know who the hell Evan Ross is, but he's somebody. Not like a big star, obviously, but he's somebody.
All right, here we go. It's got some weird subtitles, Spanish subtitles. So, but.
Oh yeah, I've seen it many times. That was after she. That was after she did like some weird a cappella song too. Like her performance was just her. I remember that. Like no instrumentation, but just her singing a song.
It's not very good.
But until the basic human rights are
what is even the point? I don't even know what she's trying to say.
I don't know, something about the Catholic Church, I guess.
She doesn't like the Pope, but
yeah. Something against the Catholic Church, I guess. I don't know.
Oh well.
She's all like tatted up and stuff now.
Mm-hmm. That's must be what I'm thinking of.
Ashley Simpson did? Because that didn't last. Because I looked it up. She, since 2014, has been married to that guy I mentioned. But it was clearly, against the Catholic Church, which she's not wrong. But I guess, anybody doing that, but she's a big Irish star, so. Speaking of Ireland, I watched Belfast the other day. It's good. It's a very predictable sort of movie, but it was good. I'd like to see more. Every time I watch a movie that like touches on the Troubles, it's only like very small and sort of like about one person's experience. I need to see something that like gives a broader, you know, tells me more. Like I've looked up and read stuff about the Troubles, but I mean, I'm not saying, oh, I need an easily digestible movie. I'm just saying every time I watch a movie set during the Troubles, it's only like some small part of it, you know, some character's experience. I need something that, I don't know, is more of an overview and covers it more. Because I mean, it's not like I don't understand the Troubles. I do, but I don't know. I'd like to see something that goes more in depth on them. Because I mean, Belfast, you know, the movie, it's just basically about how his family tried their best to stay out of it and then couldn't and left, which was true. That is really the true story of his family, Kenneth Branagh. He lived there till he was 9, and then they moved to England because of the Troubles. And that was why, because his dad and people, you know, they didn't want to be involved. But I don't know. If there's a movie that like goes into more detail about it, I'd like to see it.
Yeah, I'll check that one out.
That made a specific choice about the soundtrack too. All the songs are by Van Morrison, which is fine. I really do like Van Morrison, although he's also insane. Maybe not Ricky Schroeder level insane, but he's kind of insane. But he was great in his day. Especially those first 2 albums by Van Morrison are amazing. And I guess it doesn't really matter, but there's Van Morrison songs in that movie that like didn't exist at the time of the movie. I don't care. It's not a big criticism or anything like that, because I think the movie ends in 1969 and they have some of his 70s songs, but it's not like it's some big deal or anything.
Yeah, I'm fine with that unless it's really, really wrong. You know, like I don't like when they, you know, they'll use like a modern song in like a period piece.
I don't mind if that's like the whole deal. But it is. But if they just throw it in out of nowhere, like, you know, if you watch like The Great Gatsby by what's his name, Faz.
Yeah, and they play like fucking Daft Punk or something in there.
Yeah,
you
I
know,
mean that's like that. Like that, the whole soundtrack is that though. It's all like modern, contemporary music, it's like Jay-Z and stuff. Like so that I don't mind that much. Okay, you're doing a thing, that's fine. But I know what you mean.
like Django, you know, he's on the horse and a Rick Ross song plays, which I like it. I mean, it works. It's
Well,
just,
I mean, what are you gonna do? There's no pop music in the 1860s.
Sure. Yeah, I understand. It's just, you know.
So no, I don't mind. It what I mind is if you have like a movie set from a long time ago and has sort of like a normal sort of just like movie soundtrack with strings and stuff that all fits, and then out of nowhere there's like a pop song or something. Although I have to say, one of those moments is actually really funny because the movie's not very serious. There's a movie, I always forget his name. He's gone, and I could just say who he is and people would do it. No, I have to do his name myself. Heath Ledger. Heath Ledger's like first starring role was, I think, in A Knight's Tale. And A Knight's Tale, of course, is like medieval and stuff. And then in the middle of I mean, do you remember how they used music? Because at one point they had the crowd doing a and then they play We Will Rock You over it. But that's not even the weirdest part. The weirdest part is there's a dance sequence, and the choreography is actually quite close to actual medieval dances in that area at the time. And they play like a David Bowie song over it. It's like a weird take you out of the moment type moment in the movie. I mean, the movie's a silly comedy. It's not serious. It's not it is a period piece, but it's not being that serious. It's pretty fast and loose, but it's a stylistic choice.
Get jiggy.
Stylistic choice.
Proceed to bust a move.
Right, Golden Years. Thank you, Gene. Yeah, they all danced to Golden Years, and I mean it kind of works in a way. I don't know. I guess so, but it felt, even though they had already opened with the Queen thing, I kind of almost forgotten about it, and then suddenly this happens. I just remember being really shocked. I saw it in the theater, but it's a fun movie. I haven't seen it in a long time. That's the first movie where I saw, I think, Paul Bettany. He's funny in that. Oh, my back hurts. It's been a while since I've done this. I'm not used to sitting without support so we haven't done this in a while.
You mind if we go ahead and wrap it up?
No, that's okay. Just thinking about Eva's character again. I mean, I guess it's good. Like, as I said, some things are explained a little better in the book, but at the same time, I don't want to be one of those people that says a movie always has to hold your hand and, tell you everything. But one thing that I feel is a little bit lacking in the execution of the movie is like to get across, although we see Eva's desperation, she's trying really hard, with her son. She's trying to connect with herself. And we know that she probably feels a lot of guilt in the aftermath and blaming herself. But something that's in the book that's a little hard to get across in the movie is that she feels like her dislike for him might be fueling what he is. It's almost like he is this because I never liked him from the start. Like, that's not exactly illustrated too well in the movie, but that's something that's sort of going on in the book from what I've understood. Again, haven't actually read the book, is like, him crying all the time as a baby and her getting upset and because the stuff he does at the youngest, some kids can do that and doesn't mean they're fucking psychopaths. So at a certain point, she almost feels like either she deserves it or she caused it. That's not conveyed so much in the movie. I mean, I don't mind because you still see that she's super tortured, obviously, that she's dealing with a lot of stuff. But it was definitely hard for me to watch it a second time. I watched it last week in case we were going to do a show last week. And then today I had the time. So it's like, better watch it again. And knowing everything that's coming makes it a hard watch. And as I said, like the first 30 minutes especially seems to really be an assault on your ears with a lot of the sounds and things. I watched it with a lower volume this time. But I mean, that's the point of the movie though. Like, it's not the feel good movie of the summer. So it's not like I'm saying, don't watch this movie because it's unpleasant. I mean, you shouldn't expect it to be pleasant. But I mean, there's a lot of stuff. I mean, not everything needs to be discussed or anything, but there are things I'd like to point out. Because remember, there's all sorts of great uncomfortable moments between him and her. The best might be like her catching him masturbating and him not stopping and making eye contact with her. Like, ugh.
She kind of lingers there for a little bit too long too, I think.
She does, but I can understand it because you're just shocked that he's going to continue.
Well, it was a solid 10 seconds. I'm like, shut the door, God.
I don't think it was 10 seconds, but I mean,
was it not? Okay.
But because you're just so expecting the normal response. Like he'd be like, "What?"
Yeah.
But instead, she's just sort of entranced by him. Just keeps going and looks right at her. So I get it. It makes sense to me because it's just such a shocking thing. You don't know how to react. So you don't even with all Kevin's weirdness and off-puttingness, maybe this is still something that shocks her or anything like that. And I mean, the thing is, she's not the most pleasant of individuals either. And there's an interesting part where you think maybe they're going to bond because she's talking about the fat people at the golf course. She goes that little rant about how they're fat and it's their fault. And he goes, you can be kind of harsh sometimes. She's like, you're one to talk, which is true. And he goes, yeah, I am. He's like, I wonder where I get it. Kind of true, I suppose. Because, I mean, Kevin might be harsh, but again, we don't see too much of it. We just see him, in that way. I remember at one point his sister's displaying affection for him. And he's like, leave me alone. Go get me a pop. And then he comes back. He's like, not that one, retard. Give me a root beer. But that's mean. But I think a lot of brothers would do the same thing.
Sure.
Especially when you have that age gap. Probably, I think a lot of brothers, if you had a boy who's 15, 16, he's got a little sister who's 7 or 8, you can see why he's mostly annoyed by her presence. That doesn't mean he's a goddamn psychopath, right? Sure. And of course, the thing that he does do to her. But it's weird though, because how is it accomplished? Is it just that he left it out? Because obviously he couldn't just do it to her or she'd tell them. So he knew that she would get into it. Because she uses the Drano stuff, which we see as clearly as locked up to get the guinea pig.
We don't know that was his fault either. We don't. I mean, other than the fact that he wasn't watching her like he should have been.
Yeah.
We don't. Know that he did that on purpose. That he wanted that to happen. But
she says she put it away, And I mean, I think she is reliable, even though she's stressed out and beaten down. I still believe her when she says she put it away. So the sister's not capable of getting it out, but Kevin is. I mean, I know that is left up to the imagination. We don't know, but it seems to me, although I mean, again, how since Kevin didn't like grab it, pour it on her face, he still had to think, well, maybe she could get into it, maybe not. You don't know what he's hoping for there. If he's happy with the result or not. It is kind of vague.
Well, until he murders her, he's not really overly, abusive or anything towards her.
Right.
So,
and that's, as we talked about before, we never see, even though he's really standoffish and unpleasant with his mother, he's never threatening with his mother. He doesn't threaten anything. He doesn't really, he doesn't show anger. He shows sort of a sullenness, but he doesn't show like, rage or anything like that. And I think that's one of the reasons why, even though when we get to the point of the reveal that he killed his father, that he killed Franklin and her, it's still a bit of a shock, because even though we know that he's done something and killed his classmates, it's still, I think, a bit of a shock. Maybe not for everybody. I don't know if I was shocked. It's hard to remember now, because the first time I saw the movie was many years ago. So I don't know. Yeah. I'd like to read the book, I suppose, because the movie does miss out on some things that seem subtle, but I think would add a lot. Like, there's more about sort of her apprehension about having children in the first place, because it seemed like something she didn't actually want to begin with. Which also, again, sort of ties into her weird feelings of maybe guilt and things like that. Plus, there's this whole thing where somebody has like a lawsuit against her, and she's really combative in it, I guess. So there's some things, like some of the more, as we said, harsh side of her is not necessarily in the movie. Again, I get it. The movie, it's raining shit on her the whole time. I don't know. But I would be interested to read the book, because it does add some details that sound pretty interesting. Because while we do see a mother trying her best, it's understood in the book that she does seem to lack some maternal instincts and things like that, and she does have a bit of coldness to her that isn't all just a result of Kevin. I don't know, though. Because it's like she finally has a normal kid, but we don't really see too many scenes of her being happy about it. I mean, she must be relieved to have a kid that's not Kevin. But we don't see too much of it. Again, when we see the kid being the daughter being happy, she's interacting with the father. They're dancing and singing and things like that. But I don't think that means that she's not attached to the daughter, because you know what? There is that scene where they're walking down the street together and they're singing some sort of like little nonsense song together. So you do see a bit of her like affection for her daughter, which only makes sense.
Sure.
As I said,
Sure.
You would think that she would instantly become the favorite. Maybe that's one thing that maybe is a bit too predictable that they don't have in there. It's like we don't really see Kevin like resenting his sister or anything like that. I mean, he does ultimately kill her and he doesn't care about her, but we don't, as we said, we don't see him doing anything that bad, although the guinea pig thing is pretty bad.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm sure I'm leaving stuff out, but I guess we can wrap up. It's an unpleasant movie, but it's a good movie. It's an interesting movie. I mean, it's some harsh, serious subject matter, but it's done pretty well. And I mean, it's, as far as like the actual violence and stuff, you can really maybe applaud it for not showing that. Like, we don't actually really get a full scene of him perpetrating the massacre. We do see shots of him aiming, but we don't actually. I mean, you could say they're being deliberately vague there. I don't know. It works. We don't need to see it fully done. we understand what happened.
Sure.
So fair enough. I thought we'd get more into Ezra Miller, really, but I mean, I guess we don't need to. It's all out there.
I don't really know a whole lot about him. I haven't seen a lot of stuff he's been in.
I just mean his crazy behavior of like the last year or so, right? You know,
allegedly.
I mean, if you want my opinion on it, it's like a lot of people. It's like he clearly needs some help here. Well, one of the crazier things I will just say, in case you didn't know, is like, so that girl he was involved with, she's 18 now, and one of the things was like, if people accused him of grooming. I don't know if that's true or not, because she denies it. But then again, you could say, well, she's under his thrall, so I don't know. But she's like Native American or something, and even though he has no traces to a Native American, he seems to think he's some sort of messiah for Native Americans, and he thinks that he and her are going to bring about some sort of crazy religious rapture or something. So he's pretty nuts.
Yeah, they arrested him for something. I don't remember. They were off on like some like a compound, like a hippie compound, and I don't know, endangering a child or something. Not, not a very crazy charge.
Yeah, I know he did something in Hawaii. Very erratic behavior, but I don't know. It sounds like if he got help, he could be okay. I don't know. I mean, maybe there's worse stuff that we don't know about. I don't know. I mean, because all these people, the big thing was, they were like saying, this is a Flash movie, right? And some people are like, should they release it? It's like, well, of course they should release it. I mean, why'd you even shelve the Batgirl movie? You made a whole Batgirl movie and you're just like, no. Well, what'd you make it for then? I don't know. It seems so stupid. I really don't understand what Warner Brothers is doing with their DC movies. It's like they're trying their hardest to fuck themselves up.
They like wasting money. I know that much.
Because I'll say this about, like, if Ezra Miller, if people are really upset about his behavior, and I'm not saying they shouldn't be, then you recast the Flash. But you don't bury the movie he's already in. You just say, okay, we're moving forward. We think Ezra should concentrate on getting themselves better, or blah blah blah, or we don't condone this behavior, so we're gonna move in a new direction and cast somebody else in the role. Nobody's gonna freak out over that, but I mean, I don't think you need to bury the movie that Ezra Miller is in if it exists. So I don't know. And I say this as someone who does not give a fuck about the Flash, and I don't just mean the movie version. I mean any version. We don't have time. We're wrapping up, but people didn't know, like, I do like DC, but it's very Batman-centric for me. I'm very, except for a few more isolated characters, like the various versions of Starman and things like that, or I don't know, maybe the classic Golden Age version of Sandman. I'm not that big on like their main characters like that you see in like the Justice League and stuff like that. I openly hate Green Lantern, and there's lots of versions of him, and I don't like any of them. But the Flash, I mean, he's fine. Again, there's a few different Flashes. The most classic one is the Barry Allen one. But I don't know. Speedsters are difficult, aren't they? I mean, every time I see... I just watched the Flashpoint movie, which is the only Flash thing I like, which is the animated Flashpoint movie. And even the beginning of that doesn't make much sense to me, because it's like his stupid villains, which are literally called the Rogues, and they're terrible villains, attack his stupid museum in Central City, so he goes to stop them. And his fight with them just doesn't make any sense. Like, oh, Captain Cold has a freeze gun. What are you going to do? Well, I don't know. You could knock him out before he pulls the trigger. You're the Flash. Like, I just think speedsters are really problematic because they can just do anything. Like, oh no, here comes Mirror Master with his mirrors. Who gives a fuck? Again, the Flash, it go faster than the speed of light. So I don't see how any of these villains are any threat to you at all. But anyway, there's no time for that. But they do a really good Flash scene in the Zack Snyder's Justice League where he meets Iris and he rescues her from like a car crash. It's a really great, one thing that annoys me about a lot of those DC movies, like the Wonder Woman movies, their overuse of slow-mo. It's like the movie would go a lot quicker if you didn't have slow-mo over 5 seconds. But this, of course, because it's the Flash, they do that thing where they slow down the world. So, see how slow things look to the Flash movie. But it's actually really well done. I still recommend that movie, even though it's 4 hours long, because it's shocking how much better it is than the original. Like, I thought the original sucks, and this might be slightly better. It's way better. I still have my problems. Like, I'll never accept Batfleck. But whatever. Anyway, we don't have time for my comic book tangents now. We'll save them for another time. So thanks so much for coming back with us. Hopefully we'll get on a better schedule going forward because there's a lot of cool stuff that we want to get to, but not too bad for a comeback. We need to talk about Kevin. So that'll do.
See you.